Welcome everybody, and we are back with Psyched. And today we have Kim-adele Randall. She's a board advisor, previously with Platts. She's a leadership and business expert and speaker, and 20 over years of specializing in board level culture, leadership development, and effective communication. And today we're going to talk slightly about, social feeds for employees. Are they good or bad? So Kim, welcome to the show.
Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
For the first question, it's a very simple question. Have you used Slack, Teams, WhatsApp for work before? And what's your experience with that so far?
Yes, I have used it a lot more in the last couple of years than I'd done previously, I'll be honest. But then haven't we all? The pandemic has pushed us into that. But actually, it was always used when I've run peripatetic teams or remote teams for over 20 years. And actually having a way of being able to communicate with people is vital. But I think for me, one of the things and the tips that I've shared with people is making sure that you create a virtual water cooler, because that's been one of the challenges. I think we go onto things like Teams or Zoom or Slack, and it becomes very conscious to us as the leader that we're in your home, and we might not have normally been invited into your home. So what tends to happen is you go very work related, you go in as fast as you can, you talk about the work, and then you come back out, and that leaves people feeling a bit disconnected. So one of the things that I do with my teams, or when I'm doing transformational change with other people, is we might have a WhatsApp for work, as in specifically the tasks that we're doing and the work that we need to keep up with. And then we'll have a virtual coffee shop WhatsApp group where you can just dip in and dip out. And it's literally like those moments that you have at a water cooler where you go, what are you watching on Netflix? Or what, that's a really lovely dress. Or, what can you recommend for me to try at the weekend to do something different? Because we need to stay socially connected. So I think they are great tools, but you need to really be creative in the way that you use them to make sure that they actually help underpin your culture and don't actually undermine it.
All right, that's very interesting. I mean, looking at like Slack, even sometimes some companies have turned to Discord. There's this options to create channels, and what I've read so far is that it helps people have this focus when they go into a conversation. They have their intention, like we are here to bond, we're here to connect, and we are here to get work done. And people don't get offended by that, like, oh no, why is this person being so straightforward at our work communication stream, right? And we talk about the greatness of it, which helps with productivity, social connection. But have you seen or have you experienced the bad side of it?
Absolutely. So it does give focus. It does allow you to be really productive, but you've got to also build in that opportunity to be human, to be real. So where I've seen it work really well is those organizations that do that, but then they also add in a stream where it is just a bit more of a relaxed chat. And that. So you're going to go to the focused ones to do your focused work, but you're able to go to the others as well to just do that connection. The ones where I've seen it really destroy their culture has been where everything has been focused, where people can't come off topic, because life isn't like that. Sometimes we might need to be on topic for this particular thing, but something's just gone horribly wrong on another project that we're working on, or another client that we're interacting with, or somebody's come to us with a personal problem. And when you're in that space, you go, well, where do I go to be able to talk to somebody about this? And if all I've got is very focused groups and there isn't one for that issue because we didn't know that issue existed at that time, you end up feeling lost and not knowing where to go. And that's where it all starts to crumble. So I think for me, it's about how we best utilize it so that we have that focus, we can drive that productivity. People don't get offended because they know that's okay. This is what this meeting's for. This is what I'm driving on. And we want to be very functional and efficient, but I've got an outlet that I can go to for the other things. I think it's if you're missing that outlet, that's when you see the real damage in cultures. And you start to see people, for example, switching off their cameras, disconnecting. One of the things that I qualified in over lockdown was I'm a qualified face whisperer. So I'm trained to read people's micro expressions. And therefore, when people switch off their camera, what they're doing is they're creating a barrier. And that's usually a very early sign that they're feeling disconnected in some way, either to the project, to the leader, to the organization. And rather than call them out on it, I recommend you just go and have a chat and find out how they are and understand what's going on for them and how can you make it better. You don't go, I noticed you didn't have your camera on, which problem? Because obviously that's not very connecting at all. But, you know, one of the things that I say to people is, I don't know about you, but I'm really missing the face-to-face interaction. I wondered if you were up for just having a virtual coffee and let's just have a chat on what's going on in your world, what's going on in my world. Because sharing that little bit of vulnerability creates a safe space for them to go, actually, yeah, you're right, I'm finding this quite hard, or, you know, I'm not quite sure where to go to for this information because there isn't a focused group that allows me to say that's where it fits.
And that's quite interesting, right? It's like when we went into the pandemic, I mean, I'm just reflecting 2 years ago, you know, people tend to turn off their cameras and people would generally call us out like, hey, I can't see your face, you know, who am I talking to, or stuff like that. And like you say, it's a part of this connection, and that's the barrier that both sides are trying to build. That it's like two people trying to connect, but at the same time one person says no, the other person is chasing, and it goes on and on. And it's hard because when we speak to people about this as well, you know, people who turn off their cameras, they tend to hide behind a personality, which are introversion. You know, I'm shy. Yeah. I don't want to be seen. I don't want to show you what's going on in my life. And even when leaders or people come from the top per se to ask, you know, how you're doing, we tend to put a front. Oh, everything's fine. You know, we're okay. And stuff like that. But it makes it hard for the leader to say, then why I can't see you connecting with us on a virtual basis. You know, what's your thought on that?
I always joke with people that whenever I say I'm fine, I mean I'm fed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional, because when I'm fine, I'm usually anything but fine. And we say that because it is the age-old way of getting out of the conversation, isn't it? If I say I'm fine, then you don't have to go and ask any further questions, and I don't have to actually reveal anything about myself. But the reality is I'm probably not feeling that fine. So it's not to then say, well, I don't think you are. It's just go, oh, amazing. I'm so glad to hear that. What have you been doing recently that's gone so well? So ask another question, but not one that's a challenge. You know, ask one that's just seeking to understand. Because one of the things that I've identified in the last 30 odd years is that people want to be listened to, they want to be understood, and they want to be respected, but they don't expect to be any of those things because we've been very bad at doing that as leaders. So once you actually create that space where you are just listening, and you're listening to understand, not to interject, that's one of the biggest challenges. Is often we listen just long enough to be able to say what we want to say, rather than just listen and hold the space and just really understand what that person's coming from, what challenges are they going through, how might you help them be their best today. And maybe that is just sit and listen. You know, I've seen some horrendous examples over the years. I had one that really sticks in my mind that still terrifies me to this day, where this guy, it was our regional leader, and he came in and he was very jovial. He'd go up to people and go, hi, Andrea, how are you? But he wouldn't listen to what you said. And he did this to this poor woman on this particular day. He was like, I'm dreadful, really. I've just lost my parents. And he went, great, and moved on. And I was like, oh my goodness. And she was like horrified. And I went outside and I was like, did you hear what she said? And he was like, no. I said, she just lost her parents. She's only just come back off compassionate leave. And he was like, oh, can you go and apologize? I was like, no, you're going to have to. And he was like, I can't. I was like, you're going to have to, because if not, you'll never have any credibility. I said, so just go back and say, I'm really sorry. I've just heard what you said. I didn't hear it at the time, and I've realized how insensitive it came across. Please, let's go and have a coffee and let's have a chat. I said, because if not, you won't come back from this. You'll have lost all credibility as being an authentic person that is interested in your people. And it's hard, you know, when we make those mistakes, when we get things wrong, when we say the wrong thing. And I've said the wrong thing numerous times, and I would really love to go and bury my head in the sand and hope it just goes away and they forgive me, but it won't happen. I have to front up and stand in front of them and say, I'm sorry, I didn't mean this. It's never been my intention to offend, but it has been my impact. And for that, I'm really sorry. So this is what I'd intended to have happen. I now see this is what I've done, and please forgive me for that, because that isn't what I meant to do, and help me find a way to do what I intended to do. Because I think once we do that, then we create an opportunity for us to grow together.
I think that's a very important story. I think, yeah, it's part of our culture to do that a lot. And coming back to the topic, it's even harder when we do it virtually, right? For example, you look at technology, everything has been turned into a way to react through emojis, right? Even on Slack or Discord or everything, every time we read a message, you're going to react something like heart or love or a shocked face or a thumbs up or a clap. And all of that becomes uncertain to interpretation, right? For example, this is one of the funniest things that I've recently, not recently, maybe in the past 5 years, we had this conversation. We asked this question, on Facebook, for example, when somebody types in like somebody, they've lost somebody in their lives, like a death or even a pet or something like that. We don't know how to react on that. The basic thing that we can do is obviously comment our condolences, but because at the time, reactions were a thing, people started liking that post. So we were like, what does that actually mean? Are you saying you're sorry or you're happy that the person died? It was very interesting. And it flows down into work channel communication as well. For example, if you see somebody saying that they need help and people are just liking it without any response, what kind of effect would it be on the other person who's on the receiving end? And that's a interesting question to ask you, right? What have you seen so far, and if you've seen any pretty interesting happenings behind that?
We lost the ability to really connect. We reacted, we didn't connect. Because it was quick, wasn't it? And you scroll down and you're a bit like the guy who I just said in the previous story. You kind of go and scroll, I'm not really reading, and we kind of want to like, because we want to demonstrate that we're trying to stay connected with that person, but we're not really connecting with them. We're not being present. We're not looking at what they've said and saying, well, okay, how is it going to feel if I put a like to this? Because you're right, what are you liking? Are you liking the fact that I'm going through grief, or is your like meaning that you're here for me and you're listening? I don't know which that is as the person looking at it. So it can lead to people feeling very isolated because they don't know if they're getting support. And that is one of the reasons why they started to change those reactions, so that you could actually offer more than just it's all good, that you could actually say, I'm so sorry, or I'm sending you care, I'm sending you support, I'm sad, or I'm angry, or I'm frustrated. Because we do deal in emotions. Our emotional brain responds 24 times faster than our thinking brain. So we are built to react. And we can try and say, well, it's okay because I think through what I'm going to do. So I promise you, so read the expressions, your emotional brain has already told me the answer. You'll then think about what you want to say afterwards. So I think we've got to try and help people to relearn the skill of connecting, not reacting, because very often, and I say this to people all the time, it's like I don't get to choose how people treat me. I don't get to choose how people behave. I do get to choose how I respond, and it's my response that is the most important. So taking those moments, taking that step back sometimes and going, how's this going to land on the other person, can be invaluable, particularly in leadership, but also in really tricky situations. We all have tricky situations in our lives, in work, uncomfortable conversations that we might not want to have, or feelings of conflict at times. And I always do my best to say, what's happening and what am I making it mean? Because I'm usually responding to what I'm making it mean rather than what's actually happening. And therefore, if I can try and ask that question to myself, I can bring it back and go, okay, actually, this is all that's happening. I've created a story over here, which is what's giving me the anxiety or the frustration and I need to deal with those emotions, but right now I can deal in the moment. And I've learned that, if I'm struggling with that actually I'll take a step back. My husband does say that I'm a bit of a robot. It's like your ability to disconnect from things. But, I remember one particularly difficult conversation with him, and I was like, I'm just going to hang up now. I need 5 minutes. I will call you back in 5 minutes. But right now, I just need 5 minutes. It was like, why? Because I'm really finding it hard to come up with a response that I'm going to be proud of. And I don't want to then have to end up in an argument. So if I just take a moment to deal with what I've made this mean, I'll be able to come back and we can move forward with the facts of what's happening. And he was like, your ability to do that is scarily robotic. And I was like, well, I guess I've spent 25 years doing transformational change. There is lots of things where it's the heat of the moment and the emotion. And that is never a good place to continue, because there's an amazing book that I would recommend to anybody, which is called Crucial Conversations. And it talks about the fact that we have moments where we have a crucial conversation, one where emotion is involved, and we respond with either violence or silence. So we either get angry, we get aggressive, we get assertive, or we go the other end and we go silent and remove ourselves and hope it disappears. And neither one works. The conflict remains there and we come at it with fear. But you can reframe if you can just step away and start looking at the bigger picture. And I think once we learn to do that and we think about that, we're present, particularly when we're looking at this, the social media and the way that we react on it. If we instead get really present and think, how is this going to land? I think we'd learn to react differently. I've got a 5-year-old and she loves to send me messages with about 5 million emojis on them. And she doesn't always get, mainly she gets the right emoji, but she'd occasionally get one when I'm like, are you upset with mummy? And be like, no, mummy, why? I was like, well, you see this one here is a little bit of an angry face. And she's like, I didn't see that, mummy. It's in a swamp of millions of things. And I'm like, I'm just checking, because that's what it's saying. But I'm trying to help her understand what the emotions are so that she understands what impact they can have. Because I think we're losing that somewhat in the move to constant reaction at pace. We're not really thinking about how it lands.
And then that's quite interesting. I wanted to bring something out that I was watching on TikTok recently quite a bit. There's this psychologist who talk about the way we react is tied back to our attachment styles as kids, right? So for example, we're avoidant attachment style. We will go silent. We won't be violent. We'll just walk away and goodbye. We'll just drop everything and just leave. But the anxious ones are the ones that will chase after the other person. And it's quite interesting how it relates to workplaces as well. You would see when there's a conflict in an organization, you have those two, right? One who's trying to chase and get answers, and they're very persistent at that. And then those are the ones who are like, I don't know what to do, and I'm just going to be quiet right now. And yeah, that was just something I was thinking about when you were saying about violence and silence as reactions, and being able to take a step back before we respond is actually a very conscious thing to do, and not a lot of people have that skill.
No, because we live in a world that's so fast paced that we sometimes forget to be present to it. We're always looking at the future. Well, the future's not promised. Look at right now. Look at what's happening right now. Take a moment. It's like an old thing that I got taught 20 years ago, is be comfortable with the silence. So we talk, and the minute somebody stops, you want to be ready with what you've got to say. Because if we just stop for that second, feels uncomfortable. Why? So actually, if instead you finish talking and I go, oh, that's really interesting. Now, what do I want to say in response? As long as it's not like, a minute, so that'll be really awkward. As long as it's only a couple of seconds, what I've actually done is give you the space to just listen, for me to just listen to what it is, and then to decide, what do I think about that? What's that made me think about, and how do I want to add into that conversation? But people get very uncomfortable with silence, and I think that, for me, is one of the things I try and help people, is they learn to get comfortable with it, because silence is a beautiful thing. It's thinking time. People often, when you've asked them the question, they just want a moment to think, because they really want to respond in the best way they know how. And they can't always do that immediately. So instead, because we don't allow people that second to kind of think about it, they will answer possibly not in the best way. And then they get them, and then you create this conflict and everyone's like running around, and we've created a monster that we didn't need to have. Whereas if we just sit back and listen, and sometimes playing back what somebody said in your own words helps them realize that actually you've both taken a totally different meaning away from what's been said. So you say, are you meaning this? I'm like, no, I'm not. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. That's what I thought it was. You can remove conflict before it even starts, because in my experience, conflict comes down to three things, usually: misunderstanding, miscommunication, or misinformation. So if you look at which of those am I getting and how do I fix that, conflict pretty much can resolve itself. But it does all link back, as you said, to our childhood. You know, we create what we call I am statements, and we create them by the age of 7. We enforce them by the age of 14, and we embed them by the age of 21. And they become the silent blueprint to our life. So mine was, you know, I'm not good enough. I'm always on my own. So whatever goes off, I will then go, well, that's okay. That's because I'm not good enough. But I had to learn to go and change those labels and rework them to ones that worked for me. But we're not good at doing this for other people.
And that's very interesting. And that's okay. To be honest, I'm the generation, or rather, I am a person who loves texting, right? I do not like calls. I do not like virtual calls, because people usually react in such a way when I go silent, because I'm processing whatever they're saying and before responding. And that's why I like work channels or, you know, texting, because they don't know how much time I'm taking to think, right? And we don't need to deal with that kind of awkwardness. But I've realized that one of the things that I've done recently in calls, when I do go silent, before I go into a silent mode, I'll be like, I'm actually thinking, give me a moment. Then that person feels that assurance that, okay, this person is not just zoning out or something. And I think that connection builds a lot of understanding. And you say, you know, conflict don't arise before it even, you know, comes up itself. So I really do like that. And it's honestly a struggle for me, because I prefer to just avoid all that awkwardness and get to responding in the right way. But, you know, coming back to social platforms like let's say LinkedIn or even Slack, or even your own company, like for example, we use Happily, and we have this social feed that highlights achievements and things that people are grateful for. So for example, I can give you 5 points and say, Kim, thank you so much for making time for us today. We really are so happy to hear what you have to say. And people actually react to that and congratulate other persons. Now, when we look at about that and we talk about social comparison, that is one way to also increase competitiveness, productivity, and some sort of motivation for the rest to follow that kind of behavior. So what do you think of those kind of social feeds?
To be fair, I love them. Done well, I love them. I think they do drive all of those things, but they also drive what's important to us and what's our values. So again, done well, you can be congratulating somebody for their kindness as much as you can for their performance, because actually we want people to be kind and productive and things as well. And it invites people into that culture of being able to be grateful, to say thank you, to say, you know, I really struggled last week and I didn't know how to do this, and Andrea stepped in and helped me, and I really appreciate it. And I appreciate it enough that I don't just want to say thank you, Andrea. I want to share my thanks so that other people know what Andrea did. And Stephen Bartlett, who is amazing in the social media space, he's got a great clip that I often share with people, where he talks about the fact that it's the little things that we do that we might not notice, the things about who we are and how we show up in the world, that also go into how we get our future promotions. And he shared in a particular story about a girl who doesn't know that part of the reason that she ended up with the promotion that she got this year is because 12 months ago, whilst he was in New York, somebody messaged to let him know that one of the team had had an accident, and she'd immediately gone out and got them what they needed to get them cleaned up and sorted and make sure that they were safe. And it was that kind of kindness and responsibility for others, on top of the other things that she was doing in work, that led to her promotion. So I think it's a great way of inviting people to say, actually, we should appreciate more. I love the fact that they even do it in schools now. So my little girl has got hers is called Dojo, and her teachers can give her Dojo points, and I can give her Dojo points, and then we can share what she got them for. Other people can give each other points, you can give them to other children, and then you can give them rewards off the back of it. You know, you can say, well, you can pick to have a movie night or something. But they love the fact that they're getting appreciated, because we all do, don't we? We all love a bit of appreciation. We might not always want it in the most public way, but it's nice to be thanked, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's a basic innate need of us as humans, and I think it's also part of the foundation of connection. When
Yeah.
people appreciate us, show gratitude, and we can do the same for them, and they accept it. I think those are foundations of that connection, that trust. And I love seeing that a lot. But I'm going to be a devil's advocate today, and I poke a little bit more about this. I've been thinking about whether, because productivity and competition, or rather innovation, helps businesses grow, right? So as much as we talk about building that kind of culture that we want them to feel appreciated, to appreciate the values that they hold as a business, is it possible that some businesses might use these tools to manipulate that, right? So for example, let me give you an example. If, let's say, for an organization that says that overworking is a value for them, right? And all you see on the social feed is saying that, Kim worked all over the weekend for this project and she did amazing. And you see that constantly popping up on the feed. And people in the company who might be new would be thinking, oh man, this is the way the culture has to be. For me to get recognized, rewarded, and appreciated, I have to work on the weekends. So what do you think about that?
That's a great question. And you're right. So competition is a good thing, but it has to be healthy competition. And I've seen organizations that do that are like, we work every hour. In financial services, that used to be badge of honor. If you could almost say, I have not slept for 4 weeks because actually all I've done is work. And you'd have emails late at night, and that all it really means is you're not very productive. So if you now think about the number of organizations that are teaching their people lean and agile, which is all about taking away the non-productive work so that you can be significantly more productive. It's not about how many hours. So I used to be in that camp, and now I work in a very different camp, which is measure me on my outputs. I promise you, I will deliver more in a week than most people will. I've got recommendations going back 20 years that go, her work rate is legendary. What I'm not going to do anymore is continue to work ludicrous hours, because actually I'm at my best if I have thinking time. And I don't have thinking time if I'm actually just having to sit in front of my desk all the time to demonstrate to you that I'm working. So I think sometimes it's about saying, actually, make sure you're measuring the right thing. And if you're measuring the right thing, which should be about that efficiency, effectiveness, how you can do more with less, not how you can just do more and more, because that's going to go you where you get your thinking time. I think they can be really, really useful tools. And I found a quote recently, which I love, which is that professionals co-create, amateurs compete. And actually what you really want in your team is for them to co-create. That doesn't mean to say they're not still going to be striving to be the best, but they're striving to be the best as the team. And therefore the goal of the team is greater than the goal of the individual. And there's been some fascinating articles just this week, actually, about the crucial impact on an organization of constantly rewarding toxic high performers, those people where they're the high performer, but the rest of them aren't. And it brings me to a story from my background. I remember years ago working in an organization where they would set a target for the sales team. Like, as soon as the person hits 8 sales, they can leave. And I was like, I'm not doing that for my team. They were like, why? I said, because that means my top performer on the best day is going to go home early and I'm never going to hit my team target. So instead, I'm going to set them a team target, which is, we had 10 people in the team. As soon as we hit 80 sales, we all get to go home. So they worked together and everybody worked as hard as they could. Now, it might mean my top performer got 16 of those sales, but was happy to because he was supporting the team. But the other people worked harder, and therefore we all went together. We hit what the team, what the business needed us to do, and we all got to go home early. But people used to look at our team and go, you guys all get on so well. And it's like, because we're a team. It doesn't matter. It did. I remember one of the girls in it going, I said to her, I need from you today is 2 sales. And she goes, Kim, the target's 8. I was like, but you haven't got 1 yet this week. So if I give you 8, I may as well say 40. You're not going to get there. But if I say 2, it's achievable. It's in sight. So I promise you, tomorrow it'll be 3. So don't think this is going to be your target for life, but we just need to get you off the blocks. We need to get you working on it. and the team will get stronger as a result of it. So I think thinking about how we can actually make the whole team better is probably a better way of using that competition than pitting people against each other.
Yeah, and I completely agree, right? It also comes down to this, that everybody, there's this research, not one, but many research have shown that people who feel like they are contributing to the business results as a whole tend to stay longer with the company, and they feel more fulfilled. And it's funny because when we speak to employers, most of the time they would think that, we got to reward those who are doing great in business results, and then natural selection will happen for those who are not doing great, and they just drop out, and then turnover increases like crazy. And that's what's happening constantly. And I feel like some of the social feeds that I've seen, or some of the research or articles that I've read, says the same thing, right? If you're going to reward toxic culture and only promote and give certain kind of achievements and recognition to certain toxic behavior, that if you get your KPIs, you are therefore a staff performer, and that's it, that's what we value, then it's going to crumble real fast and real hard. And I think that's where this episode is trying to get at. If you're an employer, you got to be very aware of those things. And I like how leadership has changed over time. We talk about the open door concept like decades ago. And when you were sharing some of the stories just now before we recorded this episode, it's that leaders sort of had to be thick-faced. They have to take the first step. They have to go down. They have to go to your cubicle or the place that you're working, rather than say, come to me. Because most of the time, nobody's going to come to you.
I think for me, it's be really authentic, be yourself. People want to connect with you. They want to know what's going on in your world, share some of what's going on in your world, but ask questions. People really want to also tell you their story. Every one of us has got a story. And I've learned over the years that as a leader, my job is to learn as many stories as possible. And I can only learn them if I ask you what yours is. If not, I'm never going to know them. So I think it's going out there when we're thinking about how we're appearing on social media, and that, ask people what's going on for them. It's not about us, it's about the people that we're here to serve. And as leaders, our people that we serve are the people that work for us. So it's thinking about, how's this going to help them? How's this going to add value? What's going on in their world? Because I think the tide's changing. For a lot of years, social media was very much, let me tell you about me, and let me tell me what's going on in my world. And it's all about I'm going to take pictures of my dinner, and I'm going to share those because clearly everybody wants to see what I've eaten. And I get that if you've gone to a really nice restaurant, somebody's prepared something beautifully, because it's not about you, it's about what that person's done. But when some of my friends used to take pictures of the beans on toast, I'm like, really? Not sure the world needs to see that. So I think it's thinking about, actually, what am I doing this for? What's my purpose? And if your purpose is to engage the people that work with you, is to make sure that they feel connected. And I love the point that you made earlier, Andrea, about, if the person knows how what they're doing fits in, then actually they stay more connected and they become more loyal to that organization. And I've got a story I share all the time, and I'll do it really quickly, which is about this documentary in a Jaffa cake factory back in the 1970s. And this guy's job with a bit of metal was to shove the Jaffa on the center of the sponge. And the documentary maker went over and he said, my job's really important. And you could see this guy roll his eyes like, really, this is going to be interesting. And he was like, okay, why is your job really important? And he said, well, my job is to get the Jaffa on the center of the sponge, because if it doesn't go on the center of the sponge, the chocolate won't fully cover it. And if the chocolate doesn't fully cover it, the sell-by date's reduced, which means we can't sell to corner shops because they haven't got, the sell-by date isn't great enough, which means our market opportunity is reduced, and so is our market share, and we won't achieve our company goals. So he understood, despite having possibly the most mundane job we've ever seen, why what he did was playing into what the company did. And therefore, he saw value in what he did because the organization saw value in what he did. And so I share this, I've shared it for probably 20 years to say the goal as a leader is to help your people know what their Jaffa cake moment is. How do they fit in to the bigger organization? Because once they know that, they will outperform, they will be connected because they will be valued, they'll be appreciated, they'll be listened to. So I guess if I had any advice, it would be get out there and help people know how they fit into your organization.